Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to my 2019 bookshelf tour. I was going to wait until I had a bit more space so that my bookshelves didn't seem as cramped, but I've had the opportunity to film this now and I've wanted to show my actual bookshelves for a really long time on this channel because I always film at Dave's house and I bring my books to his place to display. So I can't wait to show you what I've actually got on my shelves, and I'd love to take you on a tour. I've got about 3.5 shelves, which I will explain later why I've got a half shelf. It's kind of on top of a dresser. But anyway, let's just get into it. I'm going to be pretty chatty throughout this video and just pull off favorites and special editions and that kind of thing. It's not going to be like a pull every book off and say the author and the title of the book. I didn't really want to do that because I'm not really interested in those type of videos, so I wanted to do something a little bit more chatty for this one. So this is my little shelf. It houses mostly fantasy books, and on the left hand side I've got my little Name of the Wind shrine, and on the right side I've got a George R.R. Martin book as well as a special edition of The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I've also got these cute little pop vinyls. So on the far right we've got Ghost from Game of Thrones, and we've also got Grey Wind as well, and on the left of those two dire walls we've got Drogon the Dragon from Game of Thrones as well. Next to these Funkos I've also got a travel mug from Chronicles of Narnia, and on my other shelf that I actually missed I have a candle called the Aeolian, and it's made by the Melting Library, but I don't believe they make candles anymore, so I'm just going to treasure this beautiful thing forever. On this shelf I also have a beautiful print of Quoth from The Name of the Wind, and then also behind him I should have had my Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear books, but they're also at Dave's house and that's where they currently live because I have them in the background of my videos. So panning down to the next shelf, I actually wanted to start with my little dragonfly mug and these two cute little bookmarks inside it because I think they're adorable. Obviously these are Pokemon themed and they say gotta read them all. And then behind those two bookmarks I've also got a bunch of fantasy books, including the Black Prism series, books I only own 1 and 4 of randomly, and then I've got a Joe Hill book as well, which I haven't read. I do have Red Sister, which I've read, but then False Prince and Rogues are on that shelf unread as well, so we should just move right along. Panning across we see a bunch of Anthony Ryan books here, and I've only read Blood Song, so let's just ignore all of that on my TBR. But we've also got Uprooted by Naomi Novik on this shelf as well, and I actually read and really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the cover is absolutely gorgeous. I adore it, and I think it's out of print now, so I'm just going to put this back on my shelf and keep it secret and safe. On this shelf I also have 2 cute little candles, and I often keep candles from subscription boxes, but I don't really burn them because my bedroom is a little bit too small. But here we've got Reading in Bed, and that comes from Meraki Candles, who is also out of business at the moment. I've also got a cute little Through the Wardrobe candle that came from an Alcrate subscription box. And then finally for this shelf I've got 2 Funko Pops. One is a green dragon and one is a brown dragon. Both of them are from Game of Thrones as well. And now just dropping down to the shelf on the bottom right to that, I do have 2 copies of Crooked Kingdom on this shelf and none of Six of Crows. But I do love that duology, and I have a candle called Perfect Heist which came from Illumicrate, and I just keep it on my shelf and I don't burn it because I usually collect candles. You'll also notice that I have Frostblood and Fireblood on this shelf but not Nightblood, and that's because I haven't read it yet. These are some of my favourite young adult elemental fantasy books which I really adore, and I'm going to have a bit of trouble rearranging this shelf because I also have Record of a Spaceborn Few that is at Dave's house. And then lastly on the left hand side I've got a few Jennifer Fallon books down here. I believe Jennifer Fallon is an Australian author, but she lives in New Zealand, and I've actually only read The Liar Thief by her, and I haven't read her sequel Retribution yet. I do also have a paperback copy of Windwitch on this shelf, and if you've seen my 2019 Priority Reads video, I actually have a hardback of Truthwitch, which I intend to read this year. Obviously I'll try and get around to reading Windwitch as well as Truthwitch this year as well, but we'll see how I go. I also have 2 little mugs on this shelf. Well, I mean, I say little, but they're actually quite big. This one I got from Fiji on a cruise with my family, and then the other one was a Christmas present. So now we're moving on to my big bookshelf, and I'm just showing you a quick overview before we dive into what's in each little box. Okay, so first up we've got my J. Kristoff shelves, and that has Nevernight, Godsgrave, Illuminae and Lifelike. Before I talk about the books on this shelf, I kind of wanted to delve into the trinkets, so I wanted to show you this mug that I got from the Studio Ghibli Museum in Japan. I think it's the most gorgeous thing ever, and I'm obsessed with the design on it. I also have this travel mug that's Studio Ghibli related as well, but it's unfortunately cracked on the inside, so I can't drink from it anymore. Behind that we've also got a few Lifelike bookmarks. We've got Lemon Fresh, Ezekiel the Lifelike, The Scary Man Preacher, and also Evie as well. And then behind all of those mugs we've got this cute little antagonist necklace that I got from an Illumicrate box. I don't really wear jewellery, but I like keeping it on this shelf because it seems to match Lifelike. We've also got this cute little card that was a Polaroid from Fakerate, as well as this cute little Illuminae coaster. And then just on the top of this shelf is a little Illuminae Files candle, and it smells like blood orange, which is delicious. And then lastly, just before we move on from this shelf, I've got these 2 advanced reader copies of Lifelike, the US and the Australian version, which I'm really proud of. And then this is the finished copy of Lifelike, which J. Kristoff has actually signed for me. And then on the next shelf over is my Nevernight collection. So this includes all of the advanced reader copies and the finished copies of Nevernight and God's Grave to exist currently. It's kind of like my Nevernight shrine, and I'm not going to pull all of them out because it's a little bit overkill of too many to show you. But I will show you the pretty UK cover, which took me a very long time to find, and I'm quite proud of that one. And then moving right along, I have this beautiful Rick Riordan shelf. I wish it was a little bit bigger because I love to display my entire collection. I've got some of his books on a different shelf in my room, but I love putting all these trinkets of his in front of the books as well, like this seashell that I randomly found on the beach. It fits the theme. And then on the right hand side of this shelf behind the Apollo book facing outwards, I have the pretty paperbacks of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I really love these editions because if you put all these covers side by side, they actually make one big picture. And the last thing that I want to point out on this shelf is the Anubis statue right here. This is an Egyptian god, and even though it's not Greek or Roman, I like putting it on this shelf because again it matches the theme. And then the final box on this shelf houses my Harry Potter and Doctor Who collections, which I won't go through because it just takes me too long to pull everything out, and these are in a corner, and a lot of books underneath these are double stacked, so I won't actually go through all of the books below these. So now in the next row down, I've mostly got my advanced reading copies down here, and the only finished copy on this shelf that I have is Unearthed by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner, and I do have the sequel to that book as well as the finished copy of Ice Wolves to put on this shelf, but that's going to involve some rearranging, so future Beck can deal with that. These socks here and this mug came from out of print, and I've also got this lovely Howl's Moving Castle candle that was custom made for me. And you'll also notice this cute little reindeer dachshund has lost his ears sadly, but I've kept him on this shelf because I really want to glue them on someday. He actually came to me from the UK from another bookworm friend, so I keep him around because he survived the trip across the pond. And I have this cute little Sherlock mug on the corner. Moving right across, I've got my beautiful Bone Season collection. I do have another candle here as well that's also custom made. And this shelf is also very cluttered because I just don't have the space, but I've got a bunch of trinkets on this shelf as well. I'll start with a little booklet in the Merits of Our Naturalness because I find this really cool. It's the book that is actually existing inside the world of the Bone Season, and it details all the different clairvoyants that exist in that world. I also have these cute little buttons as well that the publisher sent me for being a blogger for the Bone Season, and I also have this cute little Pale Dreamer candle, which I believe is from an Australian brand. The Pale Dreamer is what Paige is called in the Bone Season series. You'll probably notice that I have a bunch of copies of The Song Rising, which is book 3 in this series, and that's because the publisher actually sent me the 3rd book, and then I pre-ordered a couple as well. So I pre-ordered this one on the very end because it matches the rest of the series in the old covers, and I also pre-ordered the Stained Pages edition as well. We're moving from one packed shelf onto another, so this is now my Red Rising collection, and the reason I've got so much on this shelf to begin with is because I pre-ordered ages ago a Howler box from Illumicrate, and that was a special edition box just for Red Rising merchandise, and I haven't really had anywhere else to put it except for this shelf. It included this mug and this beanie, which I really adore, and I also have some socks up here too. I do also have some art prints and some posters that I keep in between these books so they don't accidentally get damaged. This is just one of the art pieces that I have stored in this shelf, and I keep it in the plastic because I haven't been able to put it up yet because I don't really have that much room to display it at the moment. Additionally, I've got a couple of promo copies, and I got these by trading for different books on Twitter. I know there are 4 copies in existence, but I only own 2, and they're really hard to find, so I can't really be bothered getting the other 2 to complete my collection, but they just live on the very top. And I've also got a few Iron Gold copies as well, even though I didn't adore the 4th book. I ended up pre-ordering the Stained edition before I'd even read it, so I have that pretty thing to display on my shelves, even though I didn't love that book. Hopefully I'll love the next installment though. So we've just dropped down to the next row of shelves, and these show off my Robin Hobb collection, which I'm really proud of, and I love these books and I really want to reread them, but it's really hard to find time to reread a 15-book series. So these books are definitely not in any sort of order, and I want to do a guide on how to read them, but I just displayed them how I really like seeing them. I am missing a book on this shelf. It's supposed to go next to my Night Eyes candle, and it's the first book in the first trilogy, and this is... I don't even know if this is the 2nd book in the trilogy because all of her names sound so similar. But anyway, I've got this cute little coaster that says all good things are wild and free, and I did get that from an Owl Crate a while ago, but I feel like it fits the mood of Night Eyes, which is one of the characters in the series, and that's why I popped it next to this little candle. We also have at an angle a little Hermione candle as well, and I just keep this on the shelf because it matches the colour scheme, to be honest. And then behind the candles and trinkets, I've got The Ship of Magic, which is the first book in her Live Ship Traders series, and I just love these covers so much because they remind me of really pretty parchment, and I feel like that's very fitting for a fantasy series. I also have these these 2 advanced copies sitting in the corner here, and I won't pull them out and show you the covers because honestly the covers are pretty boring. These are advanced copies or proofs and the covers have not been finalised by the time they get sent out, so the spine is probably the prettiest part of them. So these books are so big and so thick that they take up this whole entire shelf space, but I did hang my cute little necklace on here as well because my friend Sarah gave that to me and it just seemed to fit really well with this cover just by chance, so I like hanging it on my bookshelf because I feel like it fits nicely here. I've also got some anniversary editions of the first trilogy, so I've kept these here because they're really heavy and they take up a lot of space like all of her books do, so I've just shoved them into the corner. I will take one out so you can actually see what they look like. So they are inside a slipcase and they've got this stunning shiny silver edge to them, which I'm just obsessed with, and they do have foil in silver on the front covers as well. Now you might notice behind the Robin Hobb books that I've got a few V.E. Schwab books, and that's just because I don't have space to display them, so we're going to gloss right over the fact that I have no storage and continue on to the next shelf. Okay, so now we've reached the bottom shelves and you can probably first see my Harry Potter Funko Pops. I really love them, but I keep them in boxes because I know that someday soon I'm going to move and then I'm not going to have any storage for them when I do so, and I don't want them to break because look at how cute they are. So here we have my Red Queen series as well as the Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy and the Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. These are 2 books by Mackenzie Lee and I've loved the first book but I haven't quite read the second one yet. They are technically companions but you should read them one after the other. Oh, yeah, I know. Right in front of the bookshelf. Okay, I guess we're doing this part of the tour with a dog. Yeah. So the rest of this shelf houses my Red Queen books and I don't actually have enough room for Warstorm, so we're just going to ignore that until the problem goes away. The reason I have so many of these is because I ended up reading them after I'd finished writing my honours thesis and it was just such a punchy story. Even though it was a bit tropey, I just latched onto it and I got obsessed with it. So I have 2 signed hardcovers and an anniversary edition, which is really, really gorgeous. And I also have a few advanced reading copies as well. And again, you'll probably see books stacked up behind these shelves, but we're just going to ignore them because I don't have enough space to display them and talk about them. So if I can reach over my dog's leg here, this is my Caves Water candle, and Caves Water is the forest from the Raven Cycle series, so I figured it was appropriate to share here. And I've also got my Raven Cycle mugs on either side, and my Raven Cycle series all in hardback because these covers are absolutely stunning. I also have an advanced reading copy of the Raven Cycle, the first book too. And then underneath those books that you can't really see, I've got the All the Crooked Saints that is also written by Maggie Stiefvater, and I also haven't read those, so we're just going to put the mug back. On this side that I can't really see because I'm sitting right next to my shelves at an angle, I have some Lunar Chronicles stuff. So I have these cool coasters from Fairy Loot, which I showed in an unboxing, and I will link that below. Usually my Lunar Chronicles books would sit here, except they're also at Dave's house, and I was going to film some videos with them, but I did that last year and I just haven't brought them back home yet. He's just not letting me move. You're too cute. Okay, so we're on the last shelf that we can properly see on my bookshelf, and it's kind of blocked by this, which I'll show you in a minute. But I have my favourites of all time. I've got my Spellslinger series on here, and they've got a few more books coming out. I believe there's going to be 7 or 8 in the series. And in front of them is a lovely print that is done by my best friend Em. I also have this cute little candle melt that I got from Owl Crate, and then I've got a Penguin Books mug on top of all of the other Mary Lou books in the corner. I do have a Spellslinger advanced copy as well as a Spellslinger final copy. The final copy cover has the same colour scheme as the ARC, but I just wanted to show you the ARC because the art is really beautiful. And both of them could have been the final cover because they're just honestly that pretty. So now I'm going to pull out that big framed picture that I wanted to show you, and it is Hal from Hal's Moving Castle. Dave actually bought this for me when we were at a convention called Supernova, and I can't wait to take it out of all this plastic and put it on my wall. I can't do that at the moment because, like I said, I have a bit of a shortage on space, so it just lives down the side of my bookshelf and I can't wait to display it properly someday soon. And so now we move up to my Brandon Sanderson shelf, which I keep all on top of my bookshelf because I love displaying all of his books in one big line. I say Brandon Sanderson shelf, but it's more like Brandon Sanderson shrine, but let's get into it. Okay, so on the far right hand side is where we're going to start, and then we're going to pan left across like we have for my previous shelves. So for some reason I've got like a bunch of Dachshund stuff. I love Dachshunds so much, but I've got this cool mug that my parents got me, this awesome, amazing Dachshund head that my friend made. It's a Christmas decoration. I've got this cute little Funko Pop of a Dachshund as well, and a little koi fish on the end, as well as this giant doggo called Rambo. And this dog Rambo actually came with its own little book, and it's by The Oatmeal, which Dave got me, and I think he's hilarious. But moving along, I've actually got this beautiful Caledon candle, and this was actually custom made, so again, you can't buy this one. And next to it, I've got this Funko of Oh, I don't know if I should spoil Harry Potter, but basically this is a Funko of a werewolf from Harry Potter. And then behind and kind of next to that, I've got all of my Stormlight Archive books as well as some of the hardcovers. And I'm not going to pull them out because, as you can see, they're pretty well stacked and snug in there. But the hardcovers usually go out of print in the first print run, so I like to snaffle them really quickly. And I managed to find a copy of the second book, The Words of Radiance, which I'm very happy about because those are impossible to find. I've also got a little copy of Edge Dancer by Brandon Sanderson. This is just a little US edition of the novella Edge Dancer, which is actually in Arcanum Unbounded, which I'll point out on this shelf later. But this is a story that follows one of the characters in the Stormlight Archive, which is why I've got it stacked on top of all of the books for the Stormlight Archive. So moving along to Skyward, and on top of it again, I have Doug from the movie Up. I adore him, he's the cutest, and it's fitting with the dog theme on the end of this shelf. I've also got a Niffler next to him, which I adore equally, and I have the Skyward copies. I have many copies of Skyward, so I'll start from the left and work my way over. I have just the regular paperback of the UK Skyward. I've got an advanced reading copy of Skyward. I have a little sampler of Skyward in here that I'm not going to pull out because it'll send my Niffler flying. And I've also got a US hardback and a UK hardback. And then this yellow stained pages edition of Skyward, also a UK hardback, came in a Fairy Loot box, along with these Galaxy straws from Fairy Loot as well. In addition to all of those copies of Skyward, I also have my own Pilot's pin that came, I believe, in a Fey Crate box. And then moving along again, I kind of don't want to linger too fast because I know I have so many Brandon Sanderson books, but I have a copy of The Arithmetist by Brandon Sanderson, and this is in his US cover, but it's actually an advanced copy, so you can't buy this edition, but you can buy obviously the US edition. I have a UK edition as well, but it's not here, it's also at Dave's place because that seems to be where all my Wayward books end up. I also have the first volume of a hardback of White Sand, which is his graphic novel series. I was very hesitant about continuing on because it's probably one of the Brandon Sanderson books that I like the least, which is shock horror. I know, I actually found a Sanderson book mediocre, which is very unlike me. And moving along from White Sand, I have a bunch of the Mistborn series, including the first era and the second era, but I'll start on the second era because that just happens to be closer. So I've got my cute little Allomancy candle, which also came from a subscription box ages ago. I can't remember what box it was. And I also have this cute little coaster that I got from the same subscription box as well. So I'm just going to pull these two books. So I'm just going to pull two of these books out. These are part of the Mistborn series and they are the second era of the series. So we've got the Alloy of Law, which is the first book in the second era, and this is actually an advanced reading copy, and the cover actually is very unique. I haven't seen this cover before. It may be the US cover, but I like to buy the actual physical copies of the UK covers because look how pretty that white and that colour is, and they all match, which is really nice. Additionally, I've also got an advanced reading copy of Shadows of Self, which is the second book in the second era series as well. And all of those books are along here. I do actually have a paperback copy of Alloy of Law, but again, that's at Dave's place. It is the short version, and I really don't mind that it's mismatched height because all of the covers match anyway. And just moving up to the top of these books, this is actually a painting that I did from a photo of my old dog Ranger, and I had him when I was really little. I did this painting when I was about 15 or 16 years old, and I keep it up here because, again, it randomly matches the dog theme, but I like to display it up here because it's really hard to frame because it's on a canvas. Okay, and so now we're moving on from these books. These are the second era of Mistborn books, and these are the first era of Mistborn books. I have a whole Brandon Sanderson reading guide, so go and check that out if you're confused in any way. But his series tend to match colour, so that's pretty easy to distinguish. I've got his first series here, and that is the Mistborn book 1, 2, and 3, as well as his other standalones, Warbreaker and Elantris, and then his young adult series here. Mitosis actually fits in after Steelheart, but it's a little bit longer, which really frustrates me, especially when they're stacked up like this, is why I keep them on top. And I've also got this pretty mug that I got from an Owl Crate box. It's a Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets mug, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. So we're onto the last section of the Brandon Sanderson shelf. So on the very top I have a giant Funko Pop of the Okami from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and then below that I've got this series again but in different editions. So these are the tall hardcovers that are now out of print, and these were really hard to find. I'm still searching for a Steelheart copy, but this is also an advanced reading copy of Steelheart, which I'm really proud of. It's the first Brandon Sanderson advanced copy that I found, and I just find them through Twitter. There's a hashtag to trade them, so if you're wondering, that's how I get my hands on them if they're not sent to me as a blogger. I have The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds, which is basically a bind-up copy of these books along here, the Legion series, and then I've got a recent novella called Snapshot, which is a very sci-fi adult novella, and I feel like it's very underrated, so I would definitely recommend trying this first to get a taste of Brandon Sanderson's writing. And then I mentioned this earlier because Edge Dancer is one of the short stories in here, and this is Arcanum Unbounded, and this includes a bunch of his short stories from his Cosmere universe, and that's where a bunch of the books in his series actually connect in similar worlds in the same universe. If that was a bad explanation, I'm sorry, because I'm very tired and my arm hurts from pointing at all of these books, so I want to move on really quickly. But just summing up the little cute figures down here, most of them are Harry Potter related, like this is Crookshanks and Scabbers and Dobby. Dobby for once is actually standing up. He usually falls over like a little drunk. And then I've got the Lego Harry Potter here. I have no idea where I got this from, but he lives here now. And I also got this cute little, I want to say Stegosaurus, but I know that's wrong. But it's a toy that's been spray painted gold, and it had my name tag on it from my friend's wedding. And then this was just made by my aunt, so I keep him up here too. He's a cute little hedgehog. Okay, so this is the next part of my shelves. I know I said I had about 3.5 shelves to show you, and this is what I meant by the half, because this is on top of my chest of drawers that houses all my clothes. So I kind of just find any flat surface in my room and stack books on it. So the first thing that I want to point out on this shelf is a print from Night of Cake and Puppets by Laini Taylor, and her husband Jim Bartolo actually illustrated this, and it is signed because I got it as a pre-order incentive, which is really cool. But I'm just going to move that out of the way because it has more books behind it. You're going to see all these silver things piled up on these shelves, and these are all actually Bone Season candles, and they just didn't fit on top of my Bone Season collection. So they just basically say all of the different clairvoyants in a rainbow of what the kind of magics are in the Bone Season series. So would recommend reading the Bone Season so you know what all of the clairvoyants are, because they're really awesome. Okay, so behind that print we've got a bunch of books in this stack, including An Ember in the Ashes and A Torch Against the Night, both of which I've read. I don't have any huge urge to pick up the third book yet, but I will get to it eventually. I know there's a fourth book coming out as well, so I'm not in any particular rush. A Shadow's Breath is an Australian book, and I can't wait to get to that as well. I believe it's a contemporary, and it's such beautiful colours. It reminds me of a Paddle Pop ice cream. I've got on top of them a bunch of Funko Pops, so we've got Newt on the very, very top with his little briefcase, and underneath that I'm obsessed with Loki, so I've got 2 versions of him, one from Ragnarok and one from just Thor with his green uniform on. Again, all of these are in their boxes because I know that I'm going to move very soon and I don't want them to get destroyed in the move. But moving right along, we've got Demon Road by Derek Landy, which I haven't read, but I've heard it's like a young adult version of Supernatural, so I'm really psyched to get to it. And then next to that, I've got the first 2 books in the Cherub series. They're backwards, so that's the first one and that's the second. And I really love the new covers of them because I think they're just really freaking cool. I am planning on rereading the Cherub series eventually, so that's why I've got the first book and I've bought the second but have not yet read it. Next to all of these, I also have more Funko Pops because I'm obsessed with collecting them. I've got Thor down the very bottom, and he's from the Ragnarok movie, and I've also got a dancing little Groot and then the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. It took me so long to find this one because I could only find the pixelated version, but I eventually found the normal version at a convention, so I had to have him, even though he's really freaking creepy. Moving along from the Funko Pops, I've also got The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. I ended up watching the movie of Gone Girl instead of reading the book, which is like a cardinal sin, so I figured I should make up for it and read this novella. I've also got a bunch of books by Maria V. Snyder, but I haven't read the Poison Study series yet, and I believe they are supposed to be read in a specific order, and I'm not sure where these fall, but a friend was getting rid of these, I think, and I decided to grab them because the covers match my Poison Study book. Moving through the rest of these things really quickly, I've got a bunch of mints that I just keep here. A Magnus candle that is from the Falling Kingdom series, which I haven't read yet. And then I've got this cauldron that's supposed to be a mug, which I keep this bouquet of flowers in it from my friend's wedding. Behind that, I've actually got some books by Neil Schusterman, and the Unwind book is not here because that's on my priority list for this year. I've got some sunglasses in this box, and then this gorgeous print that my friend did as well. She's the same one who did The Wolf, and as you can probably tell, I'm obsessed with her artwork because it's so delicate and intricate and colourful, and I just adore it to pieces. In addition to those, I've also got a pretty geisha doll that my grandma got for me when I was really young. I was like in my early teens, I think, and just the detail on this alone is absolutely brilliant. I love it so much. But then behind that, we've got my 2 favourite doctors, so the 10th and the 11th, and then underneath that we've got another Love Oswaya book by Kirsty Egar, and this is a brilliant contemporary book. It's supposed to be kind of young adult, but it's set in college, which I really love because you don't really find many books that are about consent and feminism that are set in college. Then below that we've got a lovely book by Rachel Craw, and she is a New Zealand author, and this is a science fiction series, and another sci-fi series below it, and then more Australian books, which I have not read yet because I'm a terrible Australian reader. And then that happens to be it for this shelf, and I'll show you my next one. So this is the last random shelf that I'll show you before I show you my bookshelf, which is just down below me. So we were previously over at my chest of drawers, which is on the other side of my room, And then now we've come to the opposite side of my room, and this is just a little bookshelf that I wanted to show you because I moved my Death Note stuff up here and I really like the way it's laid out, so I thought I'd just show it off really quick. So first of all, we've got this cute little tea strainer, and we've got some whiskey that I picked up in Japan as well. But behind those things, we've got my amazing Death Note collection. I love these editions so much. They're actually stained pages black, and they're 2 volumes in one. So they're a crime and manga series, which is something that I don't usually go for. But I read these ages and ages ago in the individual volumes, and when these came out, I thought I had to get them. I can't wait to reread this series because it's just so tense and unpredictable, and I started it as like the first manga I ever discovered, so I would definitely recommend starting here. It's very complicated, but it's very interesting, so you'll not get bored of this one. So just behind these 2 mugs, I've got this cute little L Funko Pop. I haven't taken him out of the box either because he's actually an exclusive edition. I will eventually display him properly again like the rest of my Funkos, but for now he just lives up here, and I think this is a very fitting spot to keep him in. I do keep this thing on his head, and it's actually a Swarovski crystal dachshund, again with the dachshunds. I don't want to get it ruined because there's so much stuff in my room that it might potentially get knocked, so I just keep it in this little box. Next to all of that stuff, I have these cool mugs, again, that my best friend made me because she's incredible. These are also themed on Spirited Away, and on the bottom here we have No Face, and then we've got the little soot spirits that are in Spirited Away as well. And inside this mug I've actually got a signature from Brandon Sanderson. So now we're down to my final bookshelves, and I want to go through these fairly quickly because the angle is really hard to get. As you can see, I'm sitting in between my bookshelves and my mirror, which is what the other shelf was inside of. So these books are really like double packed, and they're really hard to see because I just kind of shove them here. My other big shelf is my main shelf of my main display, but these shelves is where I stuff everything so I make it fit. So I won't linger here too long, but I'll just give you a quick overview. Okay, so like I said, the angle is a little bit tight, so you're seeing everything in my mirror, and that means that everything is going to be reflected backwards, so just bear with me. In the very top corner here, I have Fruits Basket, and I adore this contemporary manga with a little bit of a fantastical twist. On top, I've got my cute little plush toy of Kyo, who's one of the characters in this series that I love. You can see him on the spine. And this is Shin. I won her at Shinjuku in one of the game arcades there when I went to Japan, and so she just sits on this shelf because I feel like it's fitting to keep her on my manga shelf. And then moving down from the Fruits Basket manga, I have a bunch of books that are double stacked along here. So one of my favourites on this shelf is actually Nevermore, and that is an advanced copy of the first book by Jessica Townsend. Would 100% recommend this series. It is a middle grade series. It's so beautiful and magical. I absolutely love it. On this shelf, I also have a bunch of books that I haven't read, including A Monster Calls, An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, and More Happy Than Not. Very, very popular authors here, so let's just breeze past those. Below all of these double stacked books, I've got these lovely Studio Ghibli movies. They're like the Japanese version of Disney if you haven't heard of them before. Some of my favourites include Kiki's Delivery Service, Princess Mononoke, which I've just seen and pulled out right here. Also, conveniently, Ponyo, which is right here as well, including Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away. I've just seen Howl's Moving Castle on the very end here. Behind all of these movies, which I'm not going to pull out, I have a few more of Rick Riordan's paperbacks in his series. I won't, like I said, drag them all out because I don't want to have a bunch of DVDs all over my floor, but that's where the rest of the Rick Riordan books live that I mentioned earlier. Moving back up next to the Fruits Basket shelf, I have a bunch of Bleach manga, including some Funkos of Ichigo and Rukia, my 2 favourite characters in the series. I've also got Kakashi here as well from the Naruto series. I haven't actually got any Naruto books here, I believe, but Naruto along with Bleach are some of the first manga series like with Death Note that I ever read, and I just got obsessed with them because these are like adventure series that are really, really cool. One is about ninjas and the other is about demons and Shinigami, which if you haven't heard of them before, just go and check it out because would recommend. Additionally, behind that I do have my Attack on Titan books. I know the series goes on a lot further than 14 volumes, so I have up to 10 and then randomly 14 here on the shelf, but I know they go to at least 20, I believe, so they're a bit of a longer series and a little bit more expensive to collect individually, which is why I haven't kept up. And on the top of this shelf, I randomly have Jump Station Heimdall from the Illuminae series, so I probably should move this to another shelf. Just below that, I have a random assortment of books, so first of all, I'll talk about the Toothless mug, which is really cool. It's got his face on the front and then his tail signia on the back, and I also have a chocolate frog that is empty because I ate the ginormous frog inside, and I've kept the packaging because it's just really pretty. So these are a bunch of advanced reading copies. Imprison the Sky is a sequel to Reign the Earth, and then these 2 are contemporary books that are coming out this year. This one comes out on the 12th of February, and I believe it's about feminism and consent, and this one is coming out in March 2019, and I think it's a retelling of Tristan and Isolde. Next to those two, I've got a manga that is about basketball. It's a sports manga, and then more Maria V. Snyder books in a different series. This is just a duology. Then just below that, I have the Spiderwick Chronicles by Holly Black. This is probably the only Holly Black book that I like. I got this a very, very long time ago. I ended up winning it from Sony from a PlayStation contest that came with the video game, which was just many eons ago. And then just underneath that, I've got these lovely alchemy books. These are middle grade books. I've only read the first one in this series, but my friend Jordan loves these and he told me to get the whole series, so I trusted him and I did, and now I have all of them to read. Behind them again are mostly a bunch of young adult books. There is a dystopian series in here that I don't really see anybody talk about, and I think they're incredible because they're about two girls who find each other in a zombie apocalypse, and the zombies are very, very sensitive to sound and movement. The two main characters in this series learn how to use sign language into each other's hands to creep past the monsters, which is just a very unique premise to a dystopian book, and I really, really liked it. And then next to it, I have a bunch of contemporary books that not read in terms of fangirl, but I've read Queens of Geek and Memoirs of a Geisha. Very, very adult and very, very young adult. Loved both of them, would recommend. Sorry if I'm speeding through these a little bit faster than my previous bookshelf, but I am trying to get through this because the camera battery has already died once and we don't want a repeat of that, so I'm trying to be as quick as I can. I am very aware that this Knife of Never Letting Go book does not go in this spot. It should go with the rest of its series over here, but I have no room on that shelf to put it, so I've just put it in the newest gap that I have found. Okay, so the angle here is a little bit tight, so please bear with me, but this is the last bit of my bookshelf. So I've got a cute little Toothless Funko, which I wanted to point out because I love him. I have a cool mug that I got from when I was in Japan, and this is just Totoro, and it's absolutely beautiful. And then inside it, I have a bunch of stuff from the Studio Ghibli Museum, including this cute little film strip, and this is actually filmed from the original movie, and I ended up getting a still of Howl's Moving Castle, which is one of my absolute favorites, so I would recommend watching Howl's Moving Castle and get to the Studio Ghibli Museum if you can, because it is very tiny but very beautiful, and this is going to be a lifelong memento, I believe. So those are the few trinkets I just wanted to point out, but the books on this shelf are mostly Full Metal Alchemist, and these are actually editions that are out of print. These are the jacketed versions, and then on top of that I have a bind-up of De Grey Man, and I actually haven't read this series, but I believe it's like a historical kind of setting with fantastical elements and potentially demons in it, so that's what drew me to this. I haven't read it. It's been on my TBR for ages. Let's move on. So just moving down from that shelf, I know I'm moving pretty quickly, but I've actually got 2 spare copies of the Full Metal Jacket edition, so I'll just show you really quickly what they look like. This is the first book, and I really love this series. This is a historical manga, and it focuses on 2 brothers who are both alchemists, and they try to bring their mother back from the dead, and then it goes completely wrong. Alphonse, the suit of armor in this, loses his entire body, and Ed loses his right arm and his leg. And now they're basically on a quest to find and restore their own bodies instead of trying to save their mother, because that went horribly wrong. Next to them, I've also got The Blue Exorcist, which is an actual demon manga as well. And this is more in the tone of Bleach and Naruto. It's a bit more fun, whereas Full Metal Alchemist is a little bit darker. And then these beautiful books here, I'm not going to pull out because I just shoved them here after filming my recent reading wrap up. So I will link that because self-promo. And then behind all of these books, I've got a few diverse books, which I really loved. I've got Golden Boy here by Abigail Tartlet, I think. I can't see the author from where I'm sitting. And then next to that, I've got If I Was Your Girl, which is a contemporary book written by a trans woman, I believe. And then behind all of those, I just kind of wanted to show off this cover of The Bone Witch because I've just got the Heart Forger, which will make an appearance in my next book haul. And this is a kind of Memoirs of a Geisha cross Name of the Wind story. It features someone looking back in flashbacks over their development as a geisha witch, and it's just such a whimsical, magical story. It's a bit of a slow burn, but if that's your thing, then you'll definitely love this book, because I definitely did. So on the shelf below all of these, I have the Harry Potter illustrated editions stacked up this way because they wouldn't fit anywhere else. And on top of that, I've got the rest of the Frostblood books that I own. I believe I talked about that at the very beginning of this video. All of these down here are actually advanced reading copies, and they just wouldn't fit on the shelf with the rest of them, so I'll quickly show you the covers. These are the pretty elemental covers of the Frostblood advanced reading copies, and I love them because they just represent the characters so well. And we are on to the last part of this bookshelf tour, so I'm just going to breeze right across it because these are all of the comics that I own. Saga is definitely one of my favorites, as you can probably tell by the lion cat here, and then I also really love Chew by John Layman. And then finally on this shelf, I just want to point out my Adulting Participating Award that says You're Trying at the very bottom. Now on these last 2 shelves, I've mostly got my Walking Dead comics here, and I've got my lovely Wolverine Funko Pop here, as well as my Thestral Funko Pop that I got for Christmas. And then behind all of that, I've got a few books by Kerry Maniscalco, as well as some socks on the very top that I got in Japan. And And then below all of that, I've got a few miscellaneous mugs, some loose comics that I got at a shop called Minotaur, which is a local comic book store for me. And then behind all of that, I've got the Winner's Curse books and my Hunger Games books, which are in the camouflage editions, which I absolutely adore. I don't know if these editions are exclusive to Australia or not, but these are my favourite editions and I can't wait to get them out and display them all on a shelf when I eventually move out of this bedroom. And with the Hunger Games, that concludes my bookshelf tour. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's probably going to be very long and I really appreciate it if you're still here. Let me know if there are any books on my shelf that you're not sure of the edition of. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments. Let me know if you see any of your favourites or if you see books that I haven't read yet that I really should get a hurry on to read already. Thank you again so much for watching and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye.